What's up? It's your boy KC. How y'all doing? Today is April 13th, 2016, and I'm coming at you live with episode 21 of my podcast show. It's a little later on in the week because 2 days ago was my birthday. I just turned 30, so I was enjoying the time with the family. Let's get this show started. You know what grinds my gears?
What?
Parents who overuse names. You know, parents aren't creative anymore. They get a hold of a new name and they just have to overuse it over and over and over again. That's why we have so many Stephanies, Ambers, Ericas, Michaels, Bryans. And what's the new name of this decade? Jaden and Avon and all that stuff like that, which are unique names. But when they get a hold of it, every parent has to name their son that. And that is just really annoying because my father gave me a unique name. My name is Kennedy. Not many people have that name. In fact, every school I went to, I was the only Kennedy in that school. And every job that I worked at, I was the only guy named Kennedy. So my father knew what he was doing. You know, and people make fun of black folks. They make fun of the ghetto folks for making up names, which a lot of those names do sound like fucking shit. Like Shabambu and Shaniqua and all that other crap. But at least they try to give their kids a name that's not used very often. And I wish other parents would use that. And that's what grinds my gears. Before I go on with the wrestling portion of my show, I want to say Blackjack Mulligan, rest in peace. He died about a week ago. And last night, we lost Balls Mahoney. For people who don't know Balls Mahoney, he was a ECW legend. And for those hardcore ECW guys, they know exactly who he is. I have to apologize. I really didn't watch ECW that much as a kid growing up because my father wouldn't let me watch it when I was a kid. But I do know of these guys, and it just sucks. He was 44 years old, dying at an early age like that. I don't know what he died from yet. It hasn't been released. But rest in peace to both of them. I'm going to do Raw's results from last week first before I get to this week. The New Day defeated the League of Nations, and they kicked out Wade Barrett, which makes sense because Wade Barrett is leaving. And I'm disappointed at that because WWE completely just mishandled this guy. They haven't used him right since the whole Nexus angle where John Cena buried all of those guys. And Wade Barrett is a good talker. He's a good wrestler. And I don't blame him for wanting to go someplace else. If you got to go somewhere else to be a star, so be it. It's not the first time that's ever happened. You look at the long list of guys that have had to leave the WWE bubble just to become big stars. Because Vince McMahon didn't know what the fuck he was supposed to be doing with these guys. You know, he saddles these guys with ridiculous gimmicks. The Bad News Barrett thing was pretty good at first when he was just doing it on YouTube. But once WWE's writers gets a hold of something, they don't know how to tell jokes. They don't know how to make people laugh. They come out with these jokes that only little kids laugh at. And us adults are just like, you know, that's not funny. So, good luck to Wade Barrett, to wherever he goes. If he goes to TNA, I think he would be perfect in New Japan, the type of style that he has. You know, he's a former bare knuckle champion. I think he would fit in just fine over there. And I'm pretty sure that they'll use him good. Up next, we had the return of my girl Lita, who I haven't seen in a long time. See, back in the Attitude Era, every guy and their father crushed on Trish Stratus. Which rightfully so, because even still to this day, Trish Stratus is still one of the hottest women on the face of this planet, and she would put a lot of girls to shame these days. So who could blame them? But for me, I was always a Lita fan because what made Lita so alluring to me is the fact that she was so different. She wasn't like the other women on that roster. She went to the beat of her own drum. She always did things her way. She didn't use her body to get attention from the fans. She used her ability, what she had at that time, to get over. You know what I'm saying? And for me, I was the type of man who never followed the crowd. Whatever they thought was cool, I didn't give a shit. I always did things my way. I did what I wanted to do. And even as a grown man now, you are not going to see me wearing no fucking skinny jeans because that shit is so freaking fruity, it's not even funny. It makes dudes look like fruit balls. And I'm not going to get a part of that trend just because they think it's cool. And all the multiple color hair that they have now and all the piercings and tattoos and shit. Even now, I still got the same attitude. I've always been my own man, and I've always done things my way. And that's why I gravitated towards Lita, because we share that interest. Anyways, she was out there to present the new women's championship to Charlotte, which I was so happy to see that shit, because finally, WWE listened to something the fans said. They got rid of that ugly ass Divas Championship. I don't care what anybody says, that belt was fucking ugly. And watching Charlotte walk around with that, who is a women's professional wrestler, it didn't look right. When the Bellas carried it, it looked right because they are divas. Charlotte is not. Charlotte is a professional wrestler. So I'm glad that they got the new belt with the white strap and the red with the W in the middle. I like it. It kind of looks like the world championship that they have now. And now we can get serious, because now the women can call themselves professional wrestlers again instead of divas, a moniker that carries so much negativity with it. Because when I think of the word diva, I think of a spoiled, bratty little bitch who thinks she's better than everybody because she looks good. And that's just something I don't see when I look at Charlotte and Bayley and Sasha and Asuka and all the girls in WWE and other places too who wrestle. Don't get me wrong, every girl on that roster is extremely attractive. All of them girls are beautiful. Every single one of them. But when I watch them wrestle and I watch the way they handle themselves, they don't come off as spoiled little bitches. They come off as professional women who carry themselves with respect. So when you put the name, the moniker diva on these girls, it's kind of insulting to them. And I'm just happy that they got rid of that. Up next, we probably had one of the worst debuts in Raw history. Baron Corbin makes his official main roster debut against Dolph Ziggler, and it went to a no contest. This match sucked because Baron Corbin, to me, he's just not that good. He's gotten better, but he's not there yet. And I think the problem with this whole thing is that they should have went the Goldberg route. They should have had this guy come out, and this is why I miss jobbers. But they should have had this guy go out and beat guys in a minute or two, like Goldberg used to do. Just go out and squash these guys so that when you get up to a mid-card guy that's good like Dolph Ziggler or one of the other guys they got, you can have him beat him and shock the people. Wow, he actually beat this dude. That's how Goldberg gradually got over it, because he just started squashing dudes one by one. And the fact that WWE doesn't have jobbers anymore, that fucking sucks. Because who do you put out there with them? You can't put a big name out there and expect them to go over. Of course he's going to lose. Randy Orton is going to beat this guy. John Cena is going to beat this guy. Roman Reigns is going to beat this guy. Brock Lesnar is going to destroy him if they put him in the ring with guys like that. You can't throw somebody into the fire that fast. And you can't expect them to get over with the fans that quick. Yes, the NXT fans know him very, very well. But when you bring him to the main roster, there are a lot of people who don't know this guy. So they need to start from the bottom. That's what I miss about the old school day of wrestling. Because every single one of those guys, Macho Man Randy Savage, Hulk Hogan, Ultimate Warrior, Ravishing Rick Rude, Mr. Perfect, etc., all those guys started at the bottom. Even The Undertaker, they came in and they beat jobbers for a consistent amount of time before they started to make their way up to bigger names. Because it gives the fans a chance to see what they can do, and it gives them a chance to go out there and control the match and to get better. And that is the importance of having guys that you can squash real quick. You know, the fans see what he's made of. They decide if they like him. If they don't like him, they can decide if this guy's going to be a heel or a babyface. And that's just something that they don't have anymore. And that's what made this debut crappy, because I'm like, this guy should not be going out there and having a match with Dolph Ziggler. With all intents and purposes, yeah, Dolph Ziggler is a squash guy. But this guy has a lot of talent. He's really good, a former world champion. And he will go out there and he will have kick-ass matches even though he loses. You know what I'm saying? You shouldn't be doing that on your first match. You should go out there and just squash a dude, amaze people. This guy's pretty good. You know what I'm saying? That's the whole importance of that. So that's why I didn't like it. We had Zack Ryder, the new Intercontinental Champion at that time. He came out there, and you know what? I got to talk about this for a second because I was a fan of Zack Ryder's. This guy made something of himself, spite of WWE refusing to do anything with him. And he had his own show on YouTube. He said, I'm going to get noticed. I'm going to get the fans to notice me. Whether WWE likes it or not, and the fans got behind this guy to the point to where Zack Ryder chants were drowning out The Rock. The Rock, one of the most popular and most known wrestlers in the world, was getting drowned out by Zack Ryder chants. And they put the United States title on him, which that title didn't mean shit, but it was something to him because it was sure as hell better than what they were doing with him, which was absolutely nothing. And then what happened? They put him in a storyline where he's best friends with John Cena, which is the kiss of death. Anybody that gets associated with John Cena in a positive way is going to die a slow, agonizing death. It's like the katana kiss of death in Mortal Kombat. She kisses you and you slowly implode and you blow up. That's what this whole storyline was. They had him in a freaking triangle, a love triangle with Eve Torres and Kane terrorizing him, and he got his ass kicked by Kane every single week. He lost his title within, I think, about 2 months, and he was doing nothing. So when they finally gave him the win at WrestleMania, it shocked everybody, and that's what they were going for. They were going for shock value. But the fact that they put the Intercontinental title on this guy, I was so happy for him. You know what I'm saying? They even had him after the match. He went up to one of the greatest Intercontinental champions that they had in that company, Scott Hall or Reza Ramon. You know what I'm saying? And he endorsed him. You know what I'm saying? From one great IC champion to another. And I was happy with the guy. And the following night, they have Zack Ryder lose the title to The Miz, of all people. To The Miz, the guy that nobody gives a fuck about. The only person that cares about The Miz is his hot wife, Maryse, which is nice to see her come back because nobody's better at playing a snotty bitch than she is. And we need more of that. But I am tired. I'm tired of seeing Vince McMahon and WWE beat these guys down to where they don't want to do it anymore. You know, it was their dream. All these guys that came into wrestling, it was their dreams to be big one day, to main event WrestleMania, to maybe be the champion. This is what made them get into wrestling. And when you have someone who constantly keeps you down, it makes it difficult for people to want to continue to do the things that they love, even though it is a dream job. And I'm pretty sure that Zack Ryder gets up every day and he thinks to himself, why am I doing this? Why am I getting up and going there when I know they're not going to do nothing with me? You know what I'm saying? I know it's got to be disheartening to this guy. You know what I'm saying? To do something that you love, that you have worked hard to get to, and you have a bastard in the company that keeps you down. It's just, it sucks. And I'm tired of seeing guys like Tyler Breeze, like Bo Dallas, Zack Ryder, Dolph Ziggler, all these guys who work their asses off not being used. That's why I'm happy to see these guys get up and go to other companies to be successful. And more of these guys need to start doing that. You look at Tyler Breeze. Tyler Breeze has lost every single match on the main roster so far. He hasn't beaten anybody yet. On NXT, this guy was something special. He could have kick-ass matches, and the fans loved this guy. But when he came up to the main roster, Vince McMahon probably took a look at this guy, how small he is and everything. And it's just, Vince McMahon just has this perception of how wrestlers are supposed to look. And if you don't look that way, then you're in the trash can. And it's fucking bullshit. I'm tired of it, man. I'm tired of seeing these guys wasted when they have probably more talent than a hell of a lot of guys on the main roster right now. And I'm sick of seeing them wasted. We had the Dudleys versus the Usos in a table match. The Dudleys went over. We had the debut of Cass and Enzo, one of the most popular tag teams, if not the most popular tag team in WWE right now. They were extremely over in this building. The cheers that they got surprised the hell out of me. I hope Vince McMahon was listening. Vince, do not mess this shit up. Let them do what they do. Do not change their characters and make them some boring, bland shit that fans have seen over and over again. They're going to be a great addition to the tag team division because we definitely need some new blood. I'm sick of seeing the same matches over and over again. And I know that these guys are going to do just fine if Vince McMahon will back off and maybe let Triple H take the reins when these guys come up. Because I know it's got to be disheartening to him because Triple H backed all these guys. He put them on NXT. He gave them a chance to show what they can do. And they got over. And I know he's extremely proud of that. And I know it's got to hurt him to see these guys come up and be wasted. Last match in the night was AJ Styles versus Cesaro versus Kevin Owens versus Chris Jericho. This was easily the match in the night. These guys went out there and had a kick-ass match. I love matches like this. This is what keeps me hanging on to wrestling. AJ Styles goes over to become the number one contender for Roman Reigns' WWE Championship. It doesn't make any sense because he lost at WrestleMania, but hell, it's a new guy. We're not going to see the same old dudes like John Cena and Randy Orton. I'm glad to see somebody else step up and become number one contender. I just hope that they don't just use AJ to feed to Roman Reigns on his way to facing John Cena, because we all know that's going to happen. He's going to get in the ring with John Cena. John Cena's probably going to beat him and become a 16-time World Heavyweight Champion. So people who hope it's not going to happen, you guys might as well give up on that. John Cena will probably be the guy to beat Roman Reigns for the championship. You mark my words. On to the Raw results from April 11th, which was my birthday. Sweet. We had Shane McMahon in charge of the show again, which makes absolutely no sense because the whole point of Shane McMahon losing to The Undertaker was to make sure that Shane McMahon never ever ran anything in that company. WWE writing, go figure. We had a match between Kevin Owens and Cesaro for the number one contendership of the Intercontinental title, which Cesaro won, and I was surprised to see that because he got injured and you would think he would have nothing to do when he came back. I kind of like the new gimmick that they're giving him. They have him in a suit and glasses. It kind of reminds me of the video game Hitman. Anyways, he won by pinfall. The next match was the Dudleys against the Lucha Dragons, in which the Dudleys win by pinfall. The Dudleys are tearing apart guys, man. I'm telling you. Up next, we had a pretty good match between Charlotte and Natalya for the Women's Championship. The match was really good until the ending. Natalya gets Charlotte in the sharpshooter. Charlotte begins to tap, but of course Ric Flair pulls the referee out of the ring, begins to argue, and Charlotte got disqualified. This is getting on my nerves because, like I said last week, we know that Charlotte is a heel, but I don't like the chicken shit heel Charlotte. I like the heel that we had on NXT, where even though she was a bad girl, she had kick-ass matches, somebody won, somebody lost. She didn't cheat like they have her doing now. They have her imitating her father every single week, and it's starting to annoy me to the point to where I'm like, I don't even feel like watching the matches because I already know what's going to happen. They really need to lay off the Nature Girl gimmick. Up next, we had the Usos versus Heath Slater and Mr. Imperfect, Curtis Axel, for the number one contendership of the tag team titles. The Usos go over, and as soon as they win, Carl Anderson and Doc Gallows from the Bullet Club or Balor Club came out and beat the holy hell out of everybody. What a debut this was. I mean, they beat the shit out of the Usos, man. I don't know which one they manhandled like that, but they was throwing him all over the place, into the barricade, into the steps. I thought he was hurt after that. I thought the way that he hit his shoulder, I'm like, that is freaking brutal, man. I don't know how they made that look good and he didn't get injured like that. But it's good to see these guys, finally. Up next, we had a match between AJ Styles and Sami Zayn. If Zayn won, he would be entered into the championship match at Payback. AJ Styles went over in this match with a phenomenal forearm after ducking a haluva kick. This was a good match. We had a segment up next with Chris Jericho bringing back his classic highlight reel. His guest was Dean Ambrose, who came out and completely hijacked the show, calling it the Ambrose Asylum, which fits this guy because he's insane. He begins to make fun of Jericho's attire, which I have questioned myself back in the past because Chris Jericho wears some weird shit, and I wonder why. Anyways, this segment ends with Jericho getting hit with the Dirty Deeds. It was a pretty good segment. Up next, we had Apollo Crews versus Adam Rose. Apollo Crews is amazing. I've never seen a guy his size be able to move the way that he does. This guy does flips and all that other crazy shit that you would see cruiserweights do, yet the guy is big enough and powerful to throw people around. He wins the match by pinfall after a spin-out powerbomb when he blocked the super kick from Adam Rose. The main event of the night had Roman Reigns and Bray Wyatt teaming up together against Sheamus and Alberto Del Rio. What a combination there. I don't know if this makes Bray Wyatt a babyface by default because the fans are not going to cheer for Reigns. They hate him and they hate the other two guys. So I guess Bray Wyatt was probably the most over guy in this match. I would like to see what a babyface Bray Wyatt would be like and see how he connects with the fans. Anyway, him and Reigns go over in the match after he hits Sister Abigail on Del Rio for the pin. This was a great match. This is better than I thought it would be from one of those makeshift tag team matches. And that was your Raw results from April 11th. On to the video game portion of the show where I talk about video games for all the fans out there. The video game of the week is a video game from PlayStation 3 and PS Vita. It's probably one of the most difficult games in video game history based on its lineage. Ninja Gaiden Sigma 2. You take control of Ryu Hayabasa, and your mission is to retrieve a demon statue and prevent the resurrection of an archfiend that can destroy the world. This game is fucking hard. I've never had so much of a hard time trying to beat a game in years since Double Dragon 3. You guys will definitely be slamming the control a lot in this game. The gameplay is amazing. The missions are great. Ryu travels all around the world in all these missions, and one mission takes place on an airplane. That's awesome. You do have more multiplayer missions than you did in the original game, which definitely gets the 2 thumbs up from me. On the PS Vita, it's actually a little better because they implemented the touchscreen controllers, which makes the gameplay that much easier and less complex. Check the game out. Is it worth it? This game called Dead Nation that came out for PlayStation 3 and a PlayStation Vita. This game is an isometric shooter, kind of like in the style of Diablo and Lara Croft and the Guardian of Light, Helldivers, and Ghostbusters The Sanctum of Slime. So it's one of those games. Your mission is to get to the end of every mission. You're placed in a zombie apocalypse. This game will really make you pull your hair out because this game can be extremely difficult because you're one person with a couple of guns and bombs and you could be surrounded by 30 zombies and they just attack you and chew you up and kill you. This game really takes a lot of skills to get through. Is it worth playing? I think so because I'm the type of guy who enjoys the zombie shooters. Well, maybe a lot of people might not like it, but those hardcore horror fans will definitely get a kick out of this. Pick the game up. You can download it on PlayStation Network anytime. It's pretty cheap now. And I think you'll have fun with it. There are 2 different modes. You have the main story that you can play through the original 12 missions. And then you have an endless mission mode where you just constantly go through and kill as many zombies as you possibly can before you die. The PlayStation Portable, or PSP, whatever you want to call it, had potential. Outside of Japan, the system failed, but Japan used that system to the fullest of its capabilities. That system got discontinued last year. That's how long it was out. And I am a huge fan of the PSP, even more so of the PS Vita because the PSP had a lot of great games that came out for it, some of them that were better than the console games. You had Mega Man Hunter X, which was the remake of Mega Man X from Super Nintendo. Awesome. You had the Phantasy Star Portable games that they had. The Blood Plus game that only came out in Japan. Yes, there was a Blood Plus game. The Metal Gear Solid Peace Walker game, which is one of the most amazing games I've ever played for any system. You had the Metal Gear Solid Portable Ops games, which were fun to play. You had so many games that came out for that handheld that revolutionized the handheld market. And it was sure as hell better than the alternative, because all Nintendo put out on the DS was a bunch of games that only little kids and girls liked. I can only think of maybe 3 serious games that they actually came out with: the Mega Man ZX games and the Dragon Ball Super Sonic Warriors 2. Those were the only 3 games that I enjoyed playing. Other than that, I didn't give a shit about the DX. But when I had the PSP, I never put that thing down. And I just wish that the US and all the other countries other than Japan would have used this system right. And it just sucks that it failed the way that it did. There are a lot of video games coming out this year that I am hyped for. Uncharted 4, the HD port to Gravity Rush, which I'm going to pick up. The HD Resident Evil 0 port that came out, I'm going to pick that up. But there's a game that jumped out at me that just made me shake my head. You know, we have a new Resident Evil game coming out called Resident Evil Umbrella Corps. Now, I hope Capcom learned their lesson from Operation Raccoon City, which was probably the most god-awful Resident Evil game to come out since Resident Evil Gaiden for the Game Boy. What makes me shake my head at this game is not only is it a Resident Evil game that has nothing to do with the story, but it is a first-person shooter. And for anybody that knows me knows that I hate first-person shooter games because they're all the same fucking game. All this is a hand in a gun. They're lazy designers, so they don't have to design a lot of things. It's just cut and paste, and that's one of the things that's just making the video game market dry up, because it's oversaturated with these first-person shooters. I just feel like this is Capcom's attempt to jump on that bandwagon of Call of Duty and Halo and all those other fucking games that are boring the shit out of people these days. I'm starting to think that game developers are running out of ideas, because one thing you could bet on for sure, that there will be a new Call of Duty every single month, that there will be a new Super Mario Brothers game in some kind of capacity, and that there will always be a Pokemon game, even though there was only supposed to be 150 when I was growing up. But it just seems like they keep going with it. I'm sick of it. It's to the point to where, yes, I'm a huge video game fan, but I'd rather stay in my own generation of games because they had variety back then. I've talked about this before. There were games that were great, there were games that were failed, but at least they tried to do things different. Unlike this generation now, you know, the PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360 era was pretty bad with the first-person shooters, and these guys now are just like, come on, come up with something new. You have all these gaming franchises out there that probably haven't been used in years, and it would be cool if some of these games actually had a good storyline, because even going back to Castle Wolfenstein for the PC, even though I don't like first-person shooters, the storyline kept me into the game. I like to watch other people play it without me having to play it, because you know how I feel about those games. But nowadays, I look at these games and all they focus on is multiplayer. That's all they focus on, because people overhype the Call of Duty games, and I call it what it is. It is a overpriced DLC video game. That's what people are playing. You get a 4-hour campaign and you call that a story? I don't get people these days, man. That's why these first-person shooters are oversaturated, because people keep feeding into this. They don't say we want something different. They just continue to buy the same fucking game every single time it comes out. Nothing different about it, just a couple of old maps and costumes you can't see. How brain dead are people? Could this Resident Evil game work? I don't know. I scratch my head and I look back at Resident Evil Survivor. Does anybody remember that shitty game at all? Forgettable characters, forgettable storyline. It was Capcom's first attempt to make Resident Evil into a first-person shooter, and it had the nerve to make a sequel which nobody cared about either. Good job, Capcom. Maybe it will work, maybe it won't. Well, one thing I can say is I sure as hell hope it's better than Operation Raccoon City. I really do hope that. Even though I probably will never play the game, I hope it beats that game, because Operation Raccoon City was so bad. I mean, it was so bad with all the glitches and bugs in that game and the generic characters that you played as. Oh my god. Picture Mortal Kombat Special Ops on steroids. That was Resident Evil Operation Raccoon City. Anime otakus, it's that time again. The anime of the week is an anime called Samurai 7. It takes place in a village called Kana, where a bunch of bandits attempt to steal money, food, women, and children for their own benefits. And once the elder of this village decides to hire 7 samurais to defend the village against the bandits. This anime is awesome. Everything that you could find in a die-hard samurai story, just like Samurai Deeper Kyo, Samurai Champloo, all those great samurai stories back then. Great artwork, great fighting scenes, and a lot of humor in this anime to keep you hooked. It even has my favorite voice actor of all time, Christopher Sabat. And for people who don't know who he is, he plays Vegeta from Dragon Ball Z, Piccolo, Yamcha, a lot of guys in that series. He also plays Louis Armstrong in Full Metal Alchemist. He plays a shitload of people. I can't name this guy's resume, but this guy's awesome. You know, so if you haven't seen this anime, you need to check it out. It's definitely 5 stars from me, 2 thumbs up. Check it out. Sat down to watch some more Dragon Ball Super, and it's finally starting to pick up. It takes place in the tournament where Goku fights a Frieza lookalike named Frost, who is a good guy, and he beats Goku. Then he goes on to beat Piccolo. Piccolo did a great job in this. There was a great scene in that fight where Piccolo is charging up the Special Beam Cannon, or the Makan Sopaso. I think that's how you say it. I'm learning how to say the Japanese terms for these names, so forgive me if it sounds like shit when I first start saying it. But he's dodging all of Frost's attacks while charging the Special Beam Cannon. That is awesome. Piccolo loses, and you find out that Frost was cheating the whole time. He had a poison needle in his wrist, so that whenever he punched Goku and Piccolo, they would lose their eyesight and they would pass out of nowhere. He poisoned these guys. Come to find out that Frost is evil, was evil all along, and that really doesn't surprise me. He's part of Frieza's race. I don't think there was ever a good version of any of those guys. Up next, we had Vegeta versus I don't know what his name is. I have to find out what it is. But Vegeta pretty much trains this guy because he didn't even know what a Super Saiyan was. Vegeta just kind of made him angry. He said he would destroy his planet if he didn't learn how to turn into a Super Saiyan, and he did, and put up a fight against Vegeta. Was Vegeta beat his ass after he went Super Saiyan God 2, which is what I like to call it. It was very entertaining, very entertaining. I want to see more shit like this. I don't want to see that garbage that they was putting out at the beginning, and I'm definitely hyped to see the next fight. I finally thought of some more video game series that should be animes. Ninja Gaiden should have been an anime a long time ago. You mean to tell me out of all the games that they made for that series, nobody ever thought about at least making a anime movie with Ryu Hayabusa? With the dragon sword, I can imagine all the types of fights that this guy could have. The epic fights could be right up there with Ichigo Kurosaki's battles that he's had in Bleach, with Goku's battles in Dragon Ball Z. If they really gave it to a company that could use it right, I think it would be amazing. Another gaming series that should have had at least a movie, an anime movie, Metal Gear. Can you imagine if they took the Shadow Moses incident and they made it into an anime series, like a 26 episode series? I think it would be great, but if they was gonna do it, they would have to introduce us to the characters like they never did before, starting with Solid Snake. I say the first couple of episodes, you should go back to the MSX video games that they had, the original Metal Gear 1 and 2, and show us those storylines, how Snake got up to the point of Shadow Moses and what he was doing before that. I think the fans will really get into something like that, and then you could take it from there through the Shadow Moses storyline, because that's just perfect for a movie, at least a 2-hour long movie. I would definitely get into that. Why hasn't somebody come up with that idea yet? And I'm going to lead off with this. I was not much of a basketball fan growing up. I'm still not much of a basketball fan now. But I know the major players in that sport. That being said, Kobe Bryant, that guy's been playing basketball since he was 18 years old. And he's done everything a b-ball player could do in that sport. He played his last game last night and he's walking away from the sport. And what I want to say is this. I hope that his story has a great ending. I hope that this guy takes the money that he's earned in this sport and invest it wisely and become a great entrepreneur and make good money like Michael Jordan and Magic Johnson and all those guys, so that he can take care of his family and give back to the community. You know, because I'm sick and tired of seeing young black men get all this money and don't know how to act when they get it. There's a lot of guys that I can name, but I'm not going to throw that out here. This is a happy occasion. I wish Kobe Bryant the best, and I hope that this guy keeps his head on straight and achieves every positive thing he possibly can in his life. That's it for episode 21 of my podcast show. You can check out my other content on my channel, KC The Most. Check out the other 20 episodes on my podcast show. My 2 episodes of KC Reviews, I got another one coming, where I take a wrestling shoot promo and I give a good critique and I give my thoughts on it and review everything that's said in the interview. I hope you guys like that. You can check out my Let's Plays that I do. I have some more of those coming. Some of my top 10 videos, I got some more of those coming. You could also check out my Twitter handle, @MostKC. Tell me how you feel about my videos. Tell me if it's good. Tell me if it's bad, but mostly good. You could also check out my Facebook page at the same name, KC The Most. Like my page, like my videos, subscribe, and comment. This is your boy KC. I'll check you out later. Peace.